Red chili pork tamales are the perfect thing to serve at the holidays or whatever occasion you're celebrating. Hi everybody and welcome back to my kitchen. Today it is all about tamales. Now I am very excited. In a couple of weeks I'll be getting on a plane and going to Oaxaca to celebrate Christmas as I always do. And there will be posada after posada and they all end with this great big party where they will be serving tamales, and they will be serving ponche, and there will be piñata after piñata, broken and candy everywhere. But it's the tamales that are really at the heart of all of that. And it's not just the eating of the tamales, it's also in the making of the tamales. So today I'm going to show you how to make 24 tamales. Now that may seem like a lot to you, but in Mexico that is nothing. People would laugh at me for making so few. Usually they get a whole crowd of people together and make hundreds of tamales because that's what they need for the posadas. Now, the first thing that we have to talk about is the corn husks and the tamal steamer. So a package of dry corn husks you can find in lots of grocery stores, certainly in every Mexican grocery store, and you just cover them with water and let them soak until they're very pliable. That could take anywhere from a couple of hours to overnight. I usually like to put the water on them the day before I'm going to make the tamales. But it's the steamer for the tamales that you have to really understand, because they're 6 inches tall, and so you have to have something that is deep. If you have a soup pot, say, and you put one of those collapsible vegetable steamers in it, you could use that. That, for a lot of people, will be absolutely the easiest way. Now, this is a real classic tamal steamer that you can buy at pretty much any Mexican grocery store. Water goes in the bottom of it. I've already put a couple inches of water in the bottom of it, and you fill it to just the line that you can see indented here. And that indentation is what supports this, this part here that goes in, that all of the tamales will stand on. So the water's boiling underneath. And so we're going to set that one to the side. I'll show you a couple of other things. This is a very cute little tamal steamer that I bought at the little Mexican grocery store really close to my house. But this kind of a steamer, this one is actually for asparagus. I don't exactly know why I have an asparagus steamer, but if you have an asparagus steamer or something like that, it works really great. Just remember, you need about this much space underneath the tamales and then 6 inches above. That is the depth that you need to work with. Okay, our next step is to make the filling, and I'll meet you back here in just a second. Okay, I'm all set up here to do the red chili pork filling. And the red chili in this filling is guajillos in this case. Guajillos are really bright flavored, and that's what will work really well in these tamales. You need to take the top off of them, the stem part like that. And then I just tear them open with my fingers. Some people like to go in with a pair of scissors, but that takes too long, and I just tear them open like that. And then you want to get most of the seeds out of them. And the next step is just to tear them into smaller pieces. This will make the blending go more smoothly. I'm going to tear the one up that I was working on when we first started here. And then I've got one more to go here. And now let's talk about the pork that's going to go into this, because the pork is going to be pork shoulder roast. Basically, you're going to need 1.5 pounds of that to start with. To tell you the truth, people in Mexico use all different cuts. So if you have something that you like to simmer into a tender cut of pork, then use that one. But I'm using pork shoulder roast. Okay, we're going to take all of these pieces of the guajillo chili now. And for this particular recipe, I am not toasting them. We're not making a sauce in that way, and we have a long simmer with this pork. So I'm going to put them in there, and I'm going to throw in 4 cloves of garlic. The spices that are going to go into this one are black pepper and cumin, and I just put them into this little molcajete that I keep around for just these small amounts of spices. It works really good. And if you've never ground spices right before you use them, you are in for an incredible treat, because the aroma that's coming up to greet me right now is part of the fun of the cooking of all of this. Okay, so I've got it pretty well ground now. You see, it doesn't take very much time if you're working with the molcajete. That's why I was encouraged for people to bring one back when you visit Mexico. Even a small one like this, just to be able to do your grinding of your spices. I always keep a small brush here so that I can brush out the molcajete. I have a couple of different small ones, but the one that works the absolute best is the molcajete from Mexico. But I have one that's made out of ceramic, and then I have another one that's made out of marble. Okay, so now we're going to blend this. You know, I'm going to go ahead and put the salt in here. We need a teaspoon of salt to go in here for the basic braise. It's not going to be our final seasoning of this, but I'm going to pour in here about half of this water. This is 6 cups of water. So I'm going to pour in here 3 of those cups of water. This is not an exact measurement. It's just to get this to blend really well. We'll add the rest of it to the pot. Okay, I think that I'm about where I need to be on that. And this blending will take a while because guajillos have notoriously tough skins. So I'm going to turn it on, and we're just going to let it go until it's completely smooth. Okay, with a high-speed blender like this, you'll be able to get it pretty smooth. If you don't have this kind of a blender, don't worry, it's still going to come out good. But I can just rub this through my fingers like that and see that there's hardly any of the sort of grit that you would associate with the skins of the chilies. But don't worry about that if yours is a little coarser, because we're going to strain this. Medium mesh sieve, nothing fancy at all, the kind that you can buy at any grocery store. And I'm going to pour that sauce in there. And then we're going to strain it. I usually like to grab a spatula like this one and press it through. And as I'm pressing it through, I start to see a collection at the bottom here of bits of skin, that notoriously tough skin of the guajillos. And that's what we're trying to eliminate here, so that it doesn't, the finished filling doesn't taste sort of gritty. So it's a fairly simple procedure there to get that out. But I'm going to show you what I've got left, and I have a high-speed blender here. So yours may be a little bit more in the bottom of your strainer, but here I've got it collected. That much is just the skins. Okay, so I usually tap the strainer like that, and then I'm going to get that out of my way over here. Remember, we have the other half of the water to put in here. And then we have all of this meat. So I cut it up into about 1/2-inch pieces. You don't want really big pieces for tamales, so about 1/2-inch pieces is the right thing to put in here. So, and you'll notice that I didn't cut all the fat off, because tamales are rich, and that fat will actually season this sauce incredibly well. Okay, so now I'll turn this guy on to about, let's see, I'm going to say about a medium heat. This will take an hour to an hour and a quarter for that meat to get really tender, but also for the sauce to reduce, because you want it to be a thick sauce. So you're going to keep going with that, and then we'll come back and we'll season it after that. Okay, this is just right in terms of thickness now. You can see it holds its shape very, very easily in a spoon. So it's reduced to the right amount. Now we started with a little bit of salt in here, but we want this to be just a touch salty. So I'm going to put just a little bit more. It doesn't need much, but I'm going to put just a little bit more in there. And now we're going to let this completely cool before we start using it to make the tamales with. So I'm just going to slide it off there. Okay, now we're on to making the batter for the tamales. And I've got pork lard here. I know that that will probably scare some of you off that I'm making these with pork lard. You can use vegetable shortening for this if you want to, but I will tell you, one of the things about great tamales is that beautiful pork flavor. So you will be missing that. So I'm a traditionalist, so I would go for the pork lard for it, but use vegetable shortening to your own discretion. Now I've put it into this mixer, and I've got the mixer set up here with the paddle. I'm going to put 2 teaspoons of salt in here. And then I'm going to put 1.5 teaspoons of baking powder, and that we are going to beat with the pork lard here. Okay, so we've got those measured in. This will take about a minute or so to get this really light and fluffy. You should notice a difference in the texture. Okay, this pork lard right now looks like buttercream. I mean, it's really, really light and fluffy. We are making a special kind of tamal that they make in the central part of Mexico that is very light and fluffy. If you go to Oaxaca, they're more pudding-like. Out in the Yucatan, definitely pudding-like. There's all different kinds of tamales, but I'm making the one from central Mexico. Okay, so I'm going to turn this off now, and I'm going to start adding masa, but we got to talk about masa here, okay? So I have 2 options for you. One is easy, and one, well, will take you to a tortilleria to buy the special masa for making tamales. So this is the special masa for making tamales. It's the only thing that we use in our restaurant, but we're lucky because we get a delivery from this really great tortilleria every single day. Now, if I take this and I press it together like that, it will hold together. But you can see it's very coarse and it's quite dry. So it can also crumble like this. Okay, the other thing that you could use is masa harina, and it's just this stuff completely dried out and then packaged and sold in the grocery stores along with flour and sugar. I mean, this is something that is very shelf stable. So all you have to do is rehydrate this, because this is very damp. You have to rehydrate this, and I give you in the recipe the amount of liquid that you would be adding to rehydrate this product here. Okay, so now that I've turned this off, I'm going to open it up and just scoop in about 1/3 of what's here. It's easier to do this in stages here because it's too hard to mix the whole thing. But once you see that it's all been incorporated, then do that same thing again, scooping in another 1/3 of this masa that we have here. And then I'm going to mix that on low speed into it. And now we've got the last little bit of the masa going in here. And then to make these into a beautiful tamal that is very fluffy, as is appreciated in the central part of Mexico, we are going to beat it and add liquid to it right now. Okay, so here is going to go a little bit of our broth. You may wonder how you make vegetarian tamales, because I know lots of people like them. You would use a vegetable stock here, and of course you would use a little bit sloppy there. And of course you would use a vegetable shortening for the fat here. But just always think about tamales as special occasion food. They're not just everyday food. And I always think of them sort of like croissant. They have to be really rich or they're not going to be good. Otherwise, you just have a crescent roll. Okay. Now what we're looking for here is the consistency of like a cake batter. That's what it's going to come out like when it's got the right amount of broth in here. I always say to people, put in about a cup of this, 2/3 of the amount that we're going to be working with, and then look at it. If it looks like really, really thick cake batter, it's not ready yet. So I'm putting a little bit at a time in here, but it's getting right to the right consistency. And one more after this, and I will have all of this broth in here. Okay. Now I'm going to beat it for just a little while to get as much air as I possibly can into it. Okay, it's been beating for a couple minutes now, and now I'm going to do the standard Central Mexico test, which is to put about a half a teaspoon of this into some ice water and then see if it floats. If it floats, it means that you've beaten in enough air. So I'm going to take a little bit of that here and then lay it down on the top like that. And of course you can see that it floats really beautifully. And now we know that we're ready to start making tamales with this tamal batter. Now on to the fun part of making the tamales. We've got that beautiful light batter over here. We've got our cooled filling here. I went through the corn husk already and I chose the largest ones, about 24 of them there, but they need to be about 6 inches or so across, at least 7 inches long, but all of these are way longer than that. There's some rejects over here. Out of the rejects, I pulled a bunch of strings to tie the tamales with, so you would just grab it at about, well, that's not a good one at all. So let's go in a little bit further here, and I'll show you what one would look like, because you want them to be really long. So you pull them at about 1/4 of an inch, and then you just run down like that, and I've got about 24 of those. You might want to do extras because there'll probably always be a few that will break when you're tying the tamales. From my rejects, I'm going to just line the bottom of our steamer here. So I'm going to put some one way and some the other, just so that all of the holes are covered, so that when it starts steaming here, you won't have a lot of direct contact between the tamales and the steam, but a very beautiful steamy environment. That's all you need there. Okay, so let's start here with one that's ideal. Okay, this is an ideal size corn husk. I'm going to take 1/4 of a cup of the batter, and I'm going to measure it. I would recommend that you do this by measuring the first few times that you do it, because you have to understand what the proportions of these are. And you're going to go to about a 4x4 square here, leaving about 1/2 an inch on this big wide side that's closest to you here, and you want to have a little bit of space on the sides as well. Then I'm going to go in with about 1.5 tablespoons of the filling right down the middle like that. And then you pick up the two sides to encase that filling. So you just pick them up like that, bring the two sides together, okay, like that. Then I just roll them around like that and fold it underneath right at that point. Now, this is where you're going to grab one of your ties and pick this up and tie it like this. Now, you can see here, and I think this is important for everybody to see, that we have a tear in this corn husk. And so I've lost a little bit of the stuff there, but that corn husk broke. So this is the way that you would handle that. You would put that down like this. Excuse me, I turned it the wrong way. You would put it back down like that, and then you would just go ahead and tie it again like that, so that you didn't waste what you had there. Okay, so I'm going to tie this one again, clean up my board, and then show you another one of these. Okay, let's try that one again. I'm going to take my 1/4 cup of masa and put that on this wide end here and spread it out into a square. Now, you don't spread it out to cover the whole thing. You go like that. Okay, then I put my about 1.5 tablespoons of the filling in the middle. Just about that much. Pick it up. In case that filling, I think I got a tiny bit too much there. In case that filling, like that, roll it around, flip it underneath like that. I usually will just kind of give it a little tap just to secure everything down there. And then I am going to tie it with one of our pull ties. You can use strings too if you don't have enough of the corn husks, or if you prefer that look. Okay, there we go. And then stand them up in the steamer, and I'll meet you back here when all those are filled. Tamales are all done, and they're standing up in the steamer, but there's a big gap on one side because this tamal steamer would easily hold probably 3.5 dozen tamales in this style. And so I got to fill that with something. Otherwise, during the steaming, they could migrate down. Okay, so I want to make a nice wall here, if you will, so that they can sit up against it. So I just upended a small bowl in there. That'll do part of it, but it's not quite enough. So I'm going to take a little bit of foil and then very loosely crumple it like this. And then that can go down on one side here. And I'm going to do another one on the other side where I think it's going to need a little bit of a support. So just like that. They're not packed tightly because you want the baking powder to do its thing, and the masa will expand a little bit. They'll grow a little bit taller. That's why you leave that little gap at the top so that they can grow taller. Top goes on. I've got this right now over a high fire, and I'm going to let this go until I see steam puffing out of the top. Then I'm going to reduce the heat so that they can cook now over this next hour, hour and a quarter. At a gentle steam. Some people like to throw a coin in the bottom of this before they put this whole thing together because the coin will just bounce around. That way, you know, if the coin stops bouncing, that you're out of water, in which case you would put hot water into the side of it. So just trickle it down into the bottom. But these will go for about an hour, hour and a quarter for them to be fully cooked. I'll show you what that's going to look like in just a second. Anybody that has grown up with tamales for special occasions loves this aroma, the aroma that's just wafting over me right now. Now, these have been on for a little over an hour now, and I am going to show you how you check to see if they're done or not. Grab a pair of tongs and we'll just pull one out here. Okay, so you slide off or cut it off. You could just cut the little tie off if you want to. And then unroll it like that. Okay, so it came away. You have to see this. So it really easily came away from the corn husk, and that's what we're looking for. If it sticks to the corn husk at all, then just fold it back up and put it back in and let it go for another 10 or 15 minutes, something like that. But I really like to pull a bunch of them out and serve them in some kind of a deep. You can serve them straight from the tamalera here, the tamal steamer. But if you're going to pass them around, then my suggestion is to fill a sort of deep vessel for them, at least enough for everybody to have one. You can come back and refill it with hot ones from the steamer. But so you have them like that, and you put them out on the table, and then you can serve them with salsa if you want to, but there's salsa on the meat that's on the inside, so it's not really common to serve them wet. If you want to make a kind of pretty package with them, You can unfold the corn husk, leave them in here, or put a couple of them in here, put your salsa on the top of it, and then it's more of a formal presentation. But most people are going to be serving these for parties, and so the idea of just pulling one out of the steamer or grabbing one from this bowl that I have here, unwrapping it yourself, because these are like little gifts that you get, and then just digging into it, man, there's the payoff.